Welcome to the second video in my self-celebration series. In this video, I'll be celebrating my first novel, The Monodreme. If you'd like to know why I'm devoting a whole video series to celebrating myself, you can find out those very good and worth finding out about reasons in the first video, Celebrating Locally. What's interesting to me about celebrating the monodreme directly after celebrating Locally is that while they are both firsts for me, first novel and first film, Locally could never hope to compete with contemporary films with high production values and experienced filmmakers, while the monodreme, which uses the same alphabet as other English language fictions, effectively has the same production values and actually does compete very well with other novels from the same genre. In fact, it pretty much slays a lot of them, in my humble thingamajig. Where Locally is probably best viewed by an audience that are willing to watch a piece of hobby work, Monodreme is suitable for somebody who wants to read a bloody good book of the science fantasy persuasion. Because it's a novel, I don't have a whole bunch of flashy visuals to show here. But I did dig out an old proposal I made for an animation studio to make Monodreme into a series. It has a few of my own homemade images in it. The animation studio was a company I had done some script writing work for in the past, but they basically dealt with 5 and 10-minute cartoon series for very young children, and my proposal was immediately identified as being way too ambitious for what they could realistically handle. Maybe I could have sent it to some bigger companies, but I already talked in Celebrating Locally about my lack of temperament for the creative industry, for industry in general. I just feel the spirit of joy leaving my body when I think about engaging with it. So I create the most rewarding expressions of creativity I can summon, and then nothing much comes of it, regardless of the quality. This has been my personal repeating creative career cycle. With the monodreme, I can happily assure you of the quality. Where I'm proud of Locally for being what I consider to be the outstanding achievement of a home hobbyist, Monodreme I am proud of simply as an outstanding book, on anybody's terms. I decided for my first novel to write a sci-fi fantasy for young adult readers. Yes, because I felt too intimidated to write a full-on adult novel, and I felt a young adult story would be less demanding on a first-time writer. I had a big idea for my story, not an original one, but one that I had not yet seen done to my liking. The idea of an ordinary human character unexpectedly finding themselves having the power of complete control over existence by sheer force of will. It's a concept that I've seen explored before in science fantasy anthologies and elsewhere, and it's one that invariably devolves into a nightmare. I wanted to attempt a fresh take on it. What I'll do is read you through the proposal I composed for the animation company. This will give you an introduction to the 4 main characters and give you an overview of the story. Then I'll read you an excerpt from the book. Cool. Thank you for listening. The Monodreme. What would happen if you could make anything happen? The concept. George, Sal, Osmo and P are just 4 normal teenagers, and when faced with an adventure of mind-staggering proportions, they do not rise to the challenge to become courageous, wisecracking heroes. They remain ordinary, frightened kids, more likely to betray themselves and each other than save the day. Indeed, it is when Sal betrays the trust of her 3 friends that she is faced with the question, What would happen if you could make anything happen? The four main characters are now introduced from George's point of view. George. I was George. Back then, I was what some people would call precocious, at least in some areas of my development, meaning my head. For a 14-year-old, I could knock out a pretty deep short story, the kind that made my English teacher, Miss Schneider, think the sun shone out of my notebook. These days, because of what happened to me, I'm not the old George anymore, precocious or otherwise. There are moments, like right now, as I write these words, I don't even feel human. Sal. She was a deep thinker, a fast runner, and she liked Star Trek. And yes, she was cute. So cute, in fact, that she could have got away with having a horrible personality, if that had been her bag. And let's face it, most cute girls try that on for size, for a while at least. She was way too cute to hang around with me, but somehow through some weird space-time anomaly, she'd inherited the geek gene. She was talking about learning how to speak Klingon so she'd be able to swear at Mr. Michaels without him realising. I didn't think it would work. Ask somebody if they want a nice cup of tea in Klingon and they'll think you're swearing at them. Osmo. Osmo should rightfully have been one of the popular kids in school, but decided to hang around with the half-geek, half-cool kids for some reason. He was just as affected by what happened as the rest of us, but he was also the least sentimental. I already knew he was better equipped to ignore his own pain than we were. P, with his scrawny body and his big wet eyes, was some kind of street urchin from a Dickens novel. The kind that always dies. Poor old P. Youngest boy in the year. He was always the last one in everything. He wasn't even 14 yet. He wanted to wipe the smug smiles from the faces of everybody who'd ever pushed him around, all the bullies that had hit him, all the teachers that had lost their patience with him, all the members of his family that had belittled him. It was something I would have liked to have seen myself. But what would the cost be? The story. After an encounter with a being who fell from the stars, Sal, an ordinary British teenage girl, becomes as powerful as God. Will she be able to keep control? When Sal is faced with this question, she creates a replica of herself to take her place while she runs off to hide and try and figure out what to do. We follow the adventures and misadventures of her three friends, George, Osmo and P, who, along with her replica, try to find Sal before she destroys everything she loves with an idle thought. As her transformation was a direct result of betraying the trust of her friends, Sal has left gifts behind for them. But these gifts are toys created by an inexperienced God. It's a case of too much being given too freely. The story takes in encounters with aliens, investigation by government operatives, visits to other planets, and the most staggering answer imaginable to the question of what would an ordinary girl do if she could do absolutely anything. But all of this high science fiction fantasy is grounded by a super authentic depiction of normal teenagers living normal lives in Banford, the most down-to-earth city in Britain. Now, the artwork I came up with was only intended to introduce the four protagonists as they appear at the start of the story, very mundane. So no images do I have to show you of the epic and mind-bending situations these four get themselves into as the story has its merry way. But the momentum is relentless. I'll read you an excerpt now, and I'm not going to give you any context or even tell you how far into the story this comes. Together, as one being with billions of minds, all awake at once, we dropped into the pupil of real Sal's left eye, and we saw the world through it. We saw how she saw, and we felt what she felt. Then her mind spoke. Hello. I was reminded of the time I had first heard Marvin Milton in my mind. The warmth in that voice was so complete, so unconditionally accepting, that it made your life up to that point seem utterly barren, devoid of love. It was only now, hearing that voice, that you knew what love was. 2 syllables were enough to tell you that there was somebody somewhere who could see every corner of your being and still not want to turn away. And somehow, through force of habit perhaps, we found ourselves translating the beauty, the subtlety, and the wide-ranging meanings contained within her thought into our own languages. Sal's mind hadn't spoken in English. She had simply inserted pure thought into our knowing. With that one thought, we knew her intimately. We knew her strength and her simplicity. It seemed tragic that such an amazing thought should go through the translation process in my own mind and come out as something so mundane as hello. I realised right then why there is so much misunderstanding between people. Words are not enough. I have a gift for each of you, but first I think that it's time we all got to know each other, said the living light that was real Sal's stream of consciousness, only it was more of an ocean, and it bore us all away on waves of coruscating blue and white radiance to a small, dark bedroom. Posters and postcards cover the walls like a mosaic. There aren't too many pop groups here, although the Manic Street Preachers make an appearance. On one wall, surrounded by a bevy of feisty comic strip girls and female Klingon warriors, cheek by cheek with Tank Girl, Albert Einstein pokes his tongue out at us. Up in the far corner, Felix the cat conspires with Marilyn Monroe and the gorillas. On the top shelf of a small bookcase by the single futon bed are 2 cuddly creatures, a flat Eric and an NTL monkey. They're sitting back to back as if they've just had an argument. The room is almost tidy, but there is too much pop culture squeezed into any and every available space for it ever to be restful. Whichever direction you look, there are faces peering at you. Che Guevara, Big Brother and Scooby-Doo all have their eyes on you. There's no escape from the iconography of the 20th century. Not here. We see all of these things and we understand them. We are the disembodied minds of the human race. Now we discover we have a body again, the body of a schoolgirl from Banford. And anything that we see through her eyes, we see with her memories and her character. We know, for example, that the untidy pile of notebooks, journals and sketch pads on the floor against the wall was once the most precious and significant item in this room. We know what's in them, a determined attempt to leave a mark on the world and make sense of it, a desperate struggle between honesty and self-deceit, a mix of frustration and admiration for the human race, proposals for utopias, ideas on love and sex, exclamations of diamond bright anger. It is Sunday, 28th November. Marvin Milton died just a few hours ago. There's a suitcase lying open on the floor in the middle of the room. Even as we step closer to it, and our face is bathed in the beam of light that is shining through the gap in the bundled coat, we experience a flood of recent memories. Marvin Milton falling from a dark sky, his eyes, his voice, telling us amazing things, showing us new worlds, giving us a mission, and then dying. A nighttime phone call to George, good old George, who's on his way over right now to save us from touching the monodreme. We love George, yet the light is shining directly into our left eye, and it is not evil at all. It is ancient, yet it is so inexperienced and curious. It is utterly unself-conscious, unmarred by any shadow of guilt or shame or fear. The light has no sense of itself as being separate from that which it shines on. The light has no sense of needing anything. It is only curious. This light wants only to shine. It is pure and it is innocent, and it does not deserve to be sent to the bottom of the sea. We must rescue it before George arrives to rescue us. We reach out and we untie the knot in the sleeves of George's coat. We open the coat out, lay it flat, and the room is lit up in a blazing glory that does not burn or dazzle. It seems as if a summer day has come to the bedroom. We reach out to touch it, but then we hesitate, almost remembering something that Marvin Milton once said. But the light is warm and reassuring. It's calling to us. It wants to play. The scent of a distant summer meadow passes by on a green breeze. There's music playing somewhere. Slowly, we reach out our hands and we touch the sun. The monodreme is smooth and hard and cool to the touch. We rest our hands on it and breathe a sigh of relief. There is no evil. Everything's okay. But then our palms adhere to the surface and a lump of dread solidifies in our chest. We try to pull our hands back, but they are stuck fast, and the monodreme has become incredibly heavy. We can't lift it. We can't even budge it. And now, our palms are starting to sink into the monodreme. It's no longer hard. A wave of fear and revulsion engulfs us as the monodreme bulges between our fingers and slowly pours over our hands. We want to panic. We are panicking, but only on the inside. Our heart, which is the heart of a solitary girl, races for all of us, pounds frantically for an entire race, but we cannot move. We are held, mesmerized, as the misshapen monodreme stretches, moving up our arms. It seems to be getting smaller, but it's hard to tell. Then an unpleasant sensation informs us that it is entering into us through the skin of our fingers and hands and arms. Its presence inside us is a jagged, amorphous energy, a cold heat that sends tendrils up inside our arms exploring. We've never felt so alone and afraid as at this moment. The faces in the room loom about us, watching impassively. It's your own fault, they're saying. Marvin Milton told you not to touch it. George and Osmo and P trusted you not to touch it. Look what you've done now. You've unleashed a horror, and you will be the first victim. The faces we had thought of as friends have become cold-eyed spectators. They will not help us. They think we deserve this. They will just watch and judge and condemn. We are alone. I'm sorry, thinks a small voice somewhere in the crashing torrent of our terror. But it's no good. It's no help. The monodreme doesn't stop. We think it anyway, over and over again. I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. Our arms are coated in a membrane of gold. The probes of energy inside are reaching past our shoulders and into our torso. There's nothing we can do to stop it. We can't even faint. All we wish for now is oblivion. Let us sleep, slip into a coma, die, anything. We just don't want to be awake anymore. We don't want to be feeling this anymore. We don't want to be thinking about it anymore. Please, George, where are you, George? Why aren't you here yet? Why aren't you here? I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Please make it stop. But it doesn't stop. The faces in the room watch on as the cold heat reaches our heart and lungs and encapsulates them, pierces them. It sends a shoot up our throat and discovers our brain. It fills our eyes with blistering colours that dance and transmute constantly. We are utterly possessed. Every cell of our body has been taken from us. It's over. The room is dark now. The monodreme has been absorbed completely into our body, so all of its light is now on the inside. The room is quiet, ordinary once more. We can see the branches and leaves of the sycamore outside through the half-open window. They're rustling slightly. We can see the line of the rooftops across the street, the TV aerials and the satellite dish, the night sky beyond. There are stars peeping through the pale broken clouds. A cool breeze enters in. A cat yowls in the yard next door. We sit and wait. We are pulsing with a foreign alien energy. Every inch of our body is alive with it. We sit and wait, and nothing happens. We lift our arm, nothing stops us. We run our fingers through our hair, it's drenched with sweat. The room is still. We try to stand, nothing prevents us. The monodreme is still there, alive and awake inside us, filling us with light and energy. But it isn't doing anything. It's just being there. It's just being and watching. Our terror subsides, giving way to exhaustion and bewilderment and curiosity. We begin to think again. We walk to the window and look out into the night. We begin to realize things. As I've said elsewhere, I recently made the decision to release all of my creative output into the public domain. So the monodreme is out there as we speak, floating around the public domain for all and anybody to have their way with. It would provide worthy content for a full-scale production of some form or other. I'd go watch it. And I am very fussy these days. See the description for a link to download a free PDF of monodreme and also one to buy an actual paperback version from the print-on-demand company lulu.com if you have those old-fashioned book-thumping ways. If you like a good science fantasy adventure that is epic in scale, thought-provoking where you want it to be, and in which each chapter is an escalation of what has gone before, you owe it to yourself. Free PDF, priced paperback, either is as good as the other, both in the description. It will take you on a trip, guaranteed. In the next celebration video, I'll be celebrating my other novel, the more adult but just as magical The Wizard in the Wood. Hope to see you there.